Millions of people make the pilgrimage to this exact spot every year. They stand here, mesmerized by the iconic glow of the GoldenGateBridge and the way the Pacific fog rolls through the headlands. You can hear the rhythmic hum of thousands of tires crossing the roadway, a sound that's become the heartbeat of San Francisco. Visitors take photos, but in their rush to capture this perfect view, they almost always turn their backs on a much darker, much more mysterious story standing right behind them. If you step away from the crowd and look into the shadows of the hillside, you'll find it, a concrete ghost. To the casual observer, it looks like a misplaced slab and a forgotten foundation. But these aren't just ruins. They're fragments of a massive, invisible iron ring that once guarded the most valuable harbor on the West Coast. Beginning in the late 1800s and accelerating through the World War II era, it was a place of high-stakes tension and constant watchfulness. These ridges were part of a secret geography, a network of bunkers, deep earth tunnels, and massive gun pits designed to fight a war, but one that never actually reached these shores. These are the ghost batteries. We're going to uncover the story of soldiers who waited in the fog, the technology that was built to stop an armada, and the invasion that haunted the dreams of an entire city. Welcome to Voyager. I'm Armando, and today we're descending into the abandoned coastal defenses of San Francisco. Let's see what's still standing. To understand why these massive slabs of concrete are scattered across these cliffs, you have to realize that for over a century, San Francisco was the most tempting target in the entire Pacific. Ever since the first nuggets of gold were pulled from the American River in 1848, the city became the vault of the West. It was a picturesque port, but more importantly, a financial artery of the United States. If an enemy fleet could seize the Golden Gate, they could effectively cut off the wealth of California and paralyze the nation's economy. By the mid-1880s, the U.S. government decided that the existing brick-and-mortar forts, like the beautiful Fort Point sitting right under the bridge, were hopelessly obsolete. They were relics of the Civil War, built for a time when cannons fired smoothbore projectiles and ships moved by sail. To protect the gold rush capital, they needed something revolutionary. They needed an iron gate. This led to a massive, multi-decade engineering project known as the Endicott system. The goal was simple but terrifyingly ambitious: to turn the entire coastline of San Francisco into a modern, invincible fortress. More than building a few new forts, this was about carving the landscape itself into a weapon. Beyond placing guns on the ridges, they hollowed out the hills and filled them with thousands of tons of concrete and reinforced steel. If you walked through the empty ammunition rooms today, you'd still feel the cold, damp weight of that engineering madness. The walls here are often 4 to 6 feet thick, designed specifically to withstand a direct hit from the large armor-piercing shells of a foreign battleship. The scale of the construction was unprecedented. They built massive underground power plants, sophisticated telephone networks to coordinate firing, and complex pulley systems to move shells that weighed hundreds of pounds each. At the time, these batteries were the highest tech machines on the planet, the equivalent of a modern aircraft carrier or a missile silo. But there's a tragic irony baked into the concrete of the Iron Gate. These defenses were so over-engineered and so specialized, by the time the Golden Gate Bridge was actually completed in 1937, many of these batteries were already becoming obsolete. The world was moving faster than the concrete could set. As the engineers were bolting down the last of these massive guns, a new kind of threat was appearing on the horizon. One that didn't care about the thick walls or iron gates because it was coming from the sky. The invincibility of these forts was being tested before they ever saw a single day of combat. If you're enjoying the video so far or learned something new, please give the video a thumbs up. It really helps the channel. Now back to the abandoned coastal defenses of San Francisco. When the news of the attack on Pearl Harbor reached the mainland on December 7, 1941, the ghost batteries went into a state of high alert panic.
For decades, these defenses had been a theoretical exercise, a series of drills and maintenance routines. Suddenly, the possibility of an Imperial Japanese carrier strike force appearing off the coast was a perceived inevitability. The fear in SanFrancisco during those first few days and weeks of the war was absolute and suffocating. The city, famous for its glittering lights and nightlife, went into a total blackout. Civil defense wardens patrolled the streets, ensuring that not even a sliver of light escaped a window that might guide an enemy bomber. People stopped looking at the Pacific horizon for the beauty of the sunset. Instead, they looked for the silhouettes of enemy masts. Up here in the Marin Headlands, thousands of young soldiers were rushed into these cold concrete husks. If you've ever stood on the cliffs when the fog rolls in, you know it's bone-chilling, damp cold that seems to soak right through your skin. Now imagine living in that for years. These men slept in underground barracks carved directly into the damp earth, surrounded by the constant, low-frequency hum of diesel generators and the smell of wet wool and grease. Life at places like Battery Spencer and Battery Townsley was a grueling cycle of fog, wind, and waiting. The soldiers spent their days practicing the complex choreography required to fire guns so large they could launch a 2,100-pound projectile over 25 miles out into the ocean. At Battery Townsley, the 16-inch guns were so powerful that the shockwave from firing would rip bunks off the walls, requiring beds to be chained down during operation. From these vantage points, the soldiers had a haunting, bird's-eye view of the city's life and the war's toll. They watched from their concrete nests as the great troop ships, vessels like the SS Lurline and the USS West Point, slipped quietly under the Golden Gate Bridge, heading for the brutal island-hopping campaigns of the South Pacific. They were the last line of defense. They were guarding a horizon that remained eerily empty. It was a war of the nerves, a 4-year staring match with an empty ocean, where the greatest enemy wasn't a Japanese battleship, but the crushing boredom and the relentless gray isolation of the SanFrancisco fog. If you want to see the most fascinating and arguably the most over-engineered piece of technology in the entire coastal defense network, you have to leave the high cliffs of the Marin Headlands and head down to the shoreline of Baker Beach. Tucked into the dunes at the north end of the sand is Battery Chamberlain, and it's here that you can come face to face with a mechanical marvel, the disappearing gun. At first glance, it looked like a standard, massive piece of black iron artillery. But the disappearing part of the name isn't a metaphor. It was a brilliant, complex solution to a problem that had plagued coastal defenders for centuries. You see, the biggest weakness of any cannon sitting on the coastline is that the moment you fire it, you've told the enemy exactly where you are. A puff of smoke or a flash of light gave the battleship at sea a perfect target to aim for. The disappearing gun fixed that with a massive counterweight carriage system. It would sit low, completely hidden behind a thick wall of concrete and dirt, totally invisible to anyone looking in from the ocean. When the command to fire was given, the crew would release a counterweight and the entire weapon would swing upward on 2 huge steel arms. Rising above the wall for just a few seconds, the crew would fire, and then the force of the recoil, working with hydraulic buffers, would push it back down, swinging it back into its hidden well below the line of sight. It was a 19th century masterpiece of physics. To see it in action required a perfectly choreographed routine of 13 men, each with a specific job, moving in total silence except for the commands of the officers. They could load, raise, fire, and hide again in about 30 seconds. From the deck of an enemy ship miles away, it would have been terrifying. One moment, there's nothing but a grassy hill, and next, a flash of fire, and by the time your own spotters could range the target, the gun had vanished back into the earth. But for all its brilliance, the disappearing weapon was built for a type of war that was already rapidly vanishing. It was a peak performance tool for a 2D battlefield, a fight between ships on the water and forts on the land. As the 1940s progressed, the engineers realized that they had overlooked a fatal flaw. Those who operated it were completely open to the sky. While these concrete walls could withstand a direct hit from a 14-inch naval shell fired from the horizon, they offered zero protection from a single 500-pound bomb dropped from a plane flying directly overhead. The era of the great coastal gun didn't end because they stopped working. It ended because the enemy stopped fighting at sea level and started flying in the air. By August 1945, the tension that gripped these cliffs for 4 long years finally broke. The war was over, but for the men stationed at the Iron Gate, there was no glorious battle to look back on. There was only the realization that the world they were returning to was fundamentally different from the one they had left. The atomic age had arrived, and with it, the era of the great coastal fortress died almost overnight. A single bomb could now do what an entire enemy fleet never could, and suddenly, thousands of tons of reinforced concrete offered no protection at all. Within a few years, the order came to decommission the batteries. In 1948, teams of workers arrived with industrial cutting torches for what was officially called Operation Blowtorch. They spent months slicing the massive steel barrels of the disappearing guns into manageable pieces of scrap metal. The high-tech range-finding equipment was stripped out, the heavy brass fittings were salvaged, and the massive steel doors to the magazines were welded shut or left to rust in the salt air. The soldiers went home, and the silence that had once been a source of anxiety became the permanent state of the headlands. This is when nature began to do what no enemy fleet ever could. It started to reclaim the Iron Gate. Today, if you wander through these ruins, you're witnessing what historians called arrested decay. The National Park Service works to keep these walls from crumbling, but they don't try to make them look new. They let the rust bloom across the iron hinges. They allow the coyote brush and the coastal sage to creep over the edges of the pits. You'll see layers of graffiti, some of it decades old, carved into the concrete. There's a haunting, heavy stillness inside these ammunition magazines that stands in total contrast to the relentless energy of the GoldenGateBridge just a few hundred yards away. While the bridge is a vibrant, living artery of the city, constantly humming with the movement of thousands of people, the batteries are frozen. You can stand in the very spot where a soldier once stood watch in the 1940s and feel the same damp wind on your face. But the purpose is gone. You have to look at the massive, rusted bolts still embedded in the concrete, the only evidence of the guns that were once here. These are the phantom limbs of a city that was prepared for a disaster that never came. They are ghost batteries, not because they're haunted by spirits, but because they're the physical remains of a fear that eventually faded away, leaving nothing behind but hollow rooms and empty horizons. We often think of history as something that happens far away, but in San Francisco, history isn't just a story, it's the foundation of the landscape. These batteries are a profound reminder of a time when the world felt very small and very dangerous. They tell a story of incredible preparation and an even more incredible stroke of luck, the fact that these guns never had to fire a single shot at an enemy. They served their purpose just by existing, until the world changed so much that they were no longer needed. They're monuments to a war that was prepared for but was never fought, and to the thousands of young people who stood here in the damp, lonely fog so that the city behind them didn't have to. So the next time you find yourself at the Marin Headlands or walking the dunes at Baker Beach, take your photo of the bridge, but then turn around, touch the cold, salt-stained walls, and think about the soldiers who stood exactly where you're standing, watching that same horizon, waiting to protect a home that never realized how close the conflict really was.
To keep exploring the hidden layers of history, click right here. Thanks for watching, I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next video.